A film title sequence can be an integral part to the success of any movie. The primary reason for a title sequence has always been to introduce the name of the film, to introduce the actors, and introduce the main people that work on it. In a perfect world scenario, an opening credit sets up an expectation for the film that you're going to see. They pull you in and get you excited about the film. But it can be treated like a throwaway kind of thing. It can be treated like, oh, okay, I don't really have to watch this. You compare the earlier film titles, they're illustrative, and they're like portraits that became kind of formulaic. To not make that part of it amazing and to throw that away, I just think is so silly. So it's inspiring to me that Saul Bass took what was arguably a modernist sensibility and a more innovative typographic approach and showed people that the title sequence could really stir you emotionally and again get you excited about the film. I think with A Man with a Golden Arm, he did something that was very simple and very graphic and again very modern, and he did that with very economical means. What was happening before, there was a lot of very elaborate paintings that were painted on glass, like very thick type that's built up like a relief on these glass panels, and then they would shoot the glass panels. It was not modern. He was a graphic designer and a typographer. What he was doing in film titles was happening all across advertising and all across graphic design. So there was this sort of graphic design revolution that was about typography, it was about letterform design, it was sort of influenced by book design and modern painting. I had read something that Saul Bass had written very early in my career about the film title being just like a poster. And so the graphic designer tries to find a metaphor or a symbol and execute it in an interesting way. And he was doing the same thing for film titles. In Psycho, it isn't the same credit, the same size, every time, slicing on. It doesn't look like anything anyone had been doing in a main title. It was extremely surprising. Saul Bass was completely getting across the idea that there's something very wrong with the main character, and you got a real strong sense of what the movie was going to be about. And that's pretty impressive when you realize that it's just lines and music. The economy of means is brilliant. To just take pure graphics and breaking up pure graphics, and also it's a similar idea in the shot on North by Northwest. It's always fascinating to me that these very simple things can set the perfectly appropriate tone, and both of those things, Psycho and North by Northwest, set a great tone independently of the level of complexity of how they've been made. I think they work perfectly for that reason, and that sort of seamless payoff from the graphic interpretation of the building to the live-action interpretation is very smart and been much imitated. And it teases you, and it gets you just interested enough that you really, you want to find out what happens. I love how the title sequence goes somewhere in Vertigo. It isn't repetitive. Starts one place, goes to another place, and ends at another place. It starts with the eye. That's a photographic treatment. You go into her eye, and it's such a powerful symbol. It has so many associations. And in the same way that Psycho has the broken lines to suggest Anthony Perkins' dysfunction, the spiraling graphic lines inside this person's head communicate this off-balance, out-of-sync nature of the character in Vertigo. So you go into the eye, and then you come out of the eye. It has a beginning and a middle and an end, and I always appreciate that about Saul Bass's titles. In A Walk on the Wild Side, there's a shot of two eyes of the cat, and he cross-dissolves between the shot that's very vertical walking. There's a lot of graphic designer thought given to compositionally what's happening in the frame, how the juxtaposition of images work. And also the type is integrated because there's a formal similarity between the positioning of the cat and where he puts the type and really made that play well with what was going on in the background. And in addition to that, I think there's a very clear story, and there's a very interesting story that builds. You introduce the character, he fights this cat, and then he walks away kind of triumphant. It's just so excellent because it has this narrative, you know, and that's actually one of my favorite ones. Saul Bass is a storyteller, but it's kind of a shorthand storytelling to set up a context to sort of take you from the time when you're, you know, getting your popcorn to sort of bring you to the place where you need to be to begin to follow this story, to put you in that context. And I think that's fascinating that he would think in those terms, and Grand Prix does that. Because of the repetition of the, you know, the scene, the way they're broken up, it just makes you feel like there's all these things going on at the same time. All this stuff is happening at this very moment, and now you're in this moment, and these are the race car drivers. I thought it was terrific how the announcer of the races was giving you a little bit of backstory about James Garner's character.
But in spite of 2 bad accidents last year, he's still just as fast as ever.
The French racer.
He's won the Grand Prix here 3 times.
The British racer.
Who's won so many races in the dark green BRMs.
It's using the title sequence to not only get these darn names across, but move the story forward. In It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, he has that globe. It's very fun. It's like a kind of riddle, you know. How many different things can I make this one thing be? It has little trap doors that come out, and it becomes an egg. It's relatively complex from an animation standpoint even today, and if you think about the fact that that was done frame by frame, it's all the more impressive that Saul Bass would have the stamina and the passion to spend that amount of time animating something that intricate that would work so well to set up the movie. And I think people looked at that and realized, you know, that they don't need to do things the way that they've been historically done. I think people kind of woke up and said, hey, the main title sequence can be a vehicle by which an artist can express himself. It's still commercial art in the sense that it always is in the service of the film, and there is a utilitarian thing that has to come across. You have to communicate the people's names. He did something that was graphically innovative and also innovative from an animation standpoint. And I think for his time, he made people realize that titles can be a way that another film artist can express themselves.